Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. It's been a stressful week in the O'Connor household. We're in the middle of, the ins and outs of a major surgery. Not for me, but,
No.
it's interesting times,
It's a tough time. So then we're definitely thinking of your family. It's a tough week. Yeah, but
And hopefully, my wife's pretty rugged, pretty durable.
yeah.
So
But anyway, so we got a bunch of stuff today, folks. We got some hot topics in Rochester. The new Buffalo Billions.
Bill Jones and Bill Jones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, nobody's surprised. Look. This news story that we're going to present tonight, like literally, like nobody going to be surprised. Nobody.
Yeah. So talk about all that stuff plus a ton more. We have like 5 or 6 other things that we probably won't even get to, but we're gonna try to get to a few of them.
Yeah,
and
we'll try to get to a few of them. One we're going to force into this, no matter what. That we've got kind of breaking news about the FBI, and B, how it ties into that crash, that limo crash in Schoharie County. And
yeah,
it's going to be kind of weird, but you guys are not, again, like ultimately, you guys are not going to be that surprised.
Yep. So we're gonna talk about all that and more. And of course, if you got something, let put it in the comments. I know Shelly out there already. Good evening, Shelly. And we got Sam out there already saying Queen Kathy and her crony money train. Love it.
Oh, it's just wonderful. Just good stuff, man. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna head to the radio show in just a few seconds. But again, of course, if you have your comments, leave them. Let's see what you got. We're gonna go live in 10.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, top fan of Robert Reich O'Connor.
I was on his page today making some comments. I'm kind of tied to my house for a couple days, so that guy needs communication from me. Period.
Yeah, top fan.
Top fan.
You're wearing that badge with honor.
With pride. Like somebody started giving me a hard time about what I said, and I'm like, they're like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm literally a top fan of this page. Who are you? You're like, I'm like, you're a robot, and I'm reporting you. Like, just got right into the childish kind of picky you and stuff. Went right after him.
No, yeah, you waved that around like, oh, you're gonna talk to me like that? Me, a top fan?
Top fan badge. It's right, like when I post,
right there. Everyone sees it now. They know.
Fan. See, that's one of those things we talk about statistics and data can be misleading because arguably I am not at all a fan of Robert Reich, though his comments do inspire me to like say things.
Yeah, I mean you're there, you're engaging, you're boosting his clout by being a top fan,
and I'm boosting my own clout by making fun of him as he so richly deserves. Robert Reich.
No, fair enough. Yeah, there's a few pages I'm like, why? Got for me a top fan of that? Like, can't stand that person. I usually just comment just to be like, this sucks.
You're a horrible person.
Yeah, right. I'm usually not just like throwing out stuff like that. I'm like, let me crack my knuckles and type something that takes way too long. But
it's not worth getting dragged down into the mud because they're just going to hurl mud at you, and so it's best if you just go make fun of them and move on. because that's
I know.
first of
I
all,
know.
that's
Yeah,
all
like here I am, like writing like 2 paragraphs, and then the replies are like wrong.
wrong.
Okay,
Go
that's
to school,
dumb.
dude. You
Yeah.
don't even have a college education. You
I'm
don't
not
know
listening to a libertarian. Okay, man. All
Mhm.
right, cool. Good response, bro.
Yeah,
Anywho, we're not here to talk about Robert Reich or comment sections. We got some real news on the table today. We got hot topic in Rochester about the migrants who are being from New York City who are being placed in Rochester. We're going to talk about that, implication of that, plus the new Buffalo Billions.
billions.
Yeah. Plus some other news that we'll get to. We got a whole bunch of topics throughout the show, so make sure you keep listening here on WYSL, or if you're listening on the live stream on Wednesday evening, Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, the Kevin Wilson pages, the Tim O'Connor pages, the Twitter accounts, wherever you are. Thank you for being here. And if you're listening on the radio and you want to participate in the show, best way to do it is to just listen to live shows, usually Tuesday evenings. I had to push the Wednesday evening this time.
Yeah, I had a long, rough day yesterday, and just it doesn't work out. Lately, we've been actually kind of more consistent on Wednesday evenings. But.
Yeah, last couple of weeks we've been on Wednesday for various reasons. But anywho, so the topic that made some news in the Rochester region was the migrants getting bussed up from New York City into upstate placements. We had talked about this, I don't know, was it like a couple months ago now when it first broke, but they're like, hey, we're going to try to place stuff in different areas. Like some, I think, went to Syracuse. Rochester and Monroe County haven't really like had anything yet. And they were one of those counties that didn't ban these placements from happening. But what they said is that anytime this is going to happen, you have to let us, the county, know ahead of time. That a hotel can't make their own arrangements to just house people in the area from who are getting bussed up from New York City. In this case, they have to let the county know. And I didn't really like that. Like, if I'm giving a generous interpretation of why the county had to do this, so they could make sure that other services are ready to transition them away from that like temporary situation into something like a bit more long term, right? If I'm giving the generous interpretation, even though to me, I'm like,
sure, that's a generous interpretation. That's an appeal to a lot of people, Kevin, as you know, are going to interpret this as welfare for illegal immigrants. Okay, that's where they're going to go with it.
Yeah, no, a lot of people, like, I mean, these are asylum seekers, they're refugees, right? They're folks who, in various different ways, ended up in New York City, who they're starting to have some issues because they don't have enough housing down there, because they won't build anything because they're a backwards city who can't get stuff done. But now they're sending people to upstate, and a bunch of people are like, they're illegals. Like, well, it's not exactly right. Like, you could, the discussion of like whether or not the county should pay for this or who should be paying for this or what. Okay, fair, but they're going through a process that exists that's already kind of like difficult and tough to get through, and they had to go through a legitimate process. And we have a legitimate process for, so people don't come in illegally, right? So you can come in and say, like, this is my reason for being here. This is why I'm leaving my other country, and this is what I'm going to do while I'm here, right?
Sure. And look, those other countries, the countries that they're leaving, are certainly experiencing, they're fleeing socialism. They're fleeing failed socialism, failed authoritarian state-run central planning systems. Look, there's a big part of me, Kevin, where I'm like, I'm very sympathetic to human beings that want to come to the United States and make a life. And regardless of the merit that I want them to have as they're coming here to work, and not like, but where I get into it with where I side with what I perceive to be the conservative side of this is that we're giving them a lot of services, right? Like we're paying their freight. They're going to be on welfare. It's costing, each immigrant costs us thousands of dollars a month. And you have a good counterpoints to that. And I want people to know that I'm sympathetic to what as a system, what we've done, right? Like this asylum seeking kind of situation looks a little bit like expanding the welfare state when we're already $30 trillion in debt. What do you think about that?
I get that people perceive it that way. And you and I have talked about this quite a bit. It doesn't have to be that way, though. It doesn't. I know a bunch of people are saying like the county's not doing enough. Like the left side is like the county's basically contributing nothing to this, like in the short term, right?
Sure.
New York City's paying for it in this case. They're paying for the hotels. They're paying for, which they're staying at a fairly nice, like a Holiday Inn in downtown. Like that's actually a fairly nice hotel.
Nice. Why not?
But like some of the concern is just to acknowledge that as people are like, and I'm sure people listening to the show are thinking like, Kevin and Tim, weren't you guys just talking about like a situation where like homeless people were like removed from rooms because like the county wasn't able to like get it together to do that? To me, I still look at that as like incompetence, but some people look at that situation like, the county doesn't have resources to take care of our own. Why are we helping out these new people?
I don't I don't like
people. I don't like that argument, but a lot of people are making it. So I'm going to acknowledge it. Like this is what people are saying. Like my counterpoint to that is two things. One, in that particular situation is government incompetence. Like that's straight up like is not a lack of resources. The government was just straight up incompetent in this situation.
Either they overreacted on the good side and freaked out, or they overreacted on the negative side and were insulted by what the hotel owner offered. Like either way, there was this overreaction because of the archetype of people that get hired in government agencies, the personality archetype. Like that's what it was, man. That's gonna be a thing. But it seemed, you read that article, it seemed a little bit malicious, but I could see where if I tried really hard, I could give them the benefit of the doubt. But I don't know.
I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm calling them incompetent. You know, like I don't think it's like mean spirited. I think it was incompetent, and there should be accountability for that too. It's just a different type of blame and accountability needed than like intentionally trying to hurt someone. But anyway, so like I do hear a bunch of people say like, but what about the homeless in our community? Okay, like it always feels disingenuous. Not always, but sometimes it feels disingenuous to me when that gets brought up, because like, is that really like the thing you're caring about? Like, does it matter to you that much? Like you're just bringing this up as a like, but what about the homeless when like someone wants to help out migrants? Like to me, like it doesn't really feel genuine, and I'm sure for some people it does feel genuine, but to me it usually doesn't. And again, the county and the nonprofits here do have resources to take care of folks. Like they can, once you get people placed, the idea should be, because we talked about like, does this expand the welfare state? The idea should be is that, okay, they're here, they connect with a nonprofit, they get permanent housing, and then they get to go to work right away. And most people are like, that's probably what they want to do. They don't want to like sit around and like hang out in a hotel for like 2 years. Like they want to go, they want to get their own place. A lot of them have kids. There's 77 migrants who got put in this hotel. A lot of them are like kids under 12. They want to go get their kids in school, get an apartment, get a job, and like start living their life. And to me, like there's nothing wrong with that. I know some folks are like, but like, why should they go here and get jobs? Like, we need people to work. And like Rochester has like an interesting issue in that like there's a lot of places that are having trouble finding people who can work.
Yeah,
like it's still a thing.
It's real.
There's certainly people who can work and choose not to, and a lot of those are native-born like people. They're people who live here, and if these migrants want to come in and we can let them work and they're able to do their jobs, let them do the thing. Businesses need the help. Like what that solves a problem for local businesses, and it helps them like live the American dream and have a good life. And you know they're going to be some of the most like patriotic people immediately, because they know what the alternative is. If there's someone out nowhere, these migrants are coming, but if there's someone coming from Venezuela, like they know what the alternative looks like. They're here to work to make their dream possible and to give a better life for their kids.
Which honestly, Kevin, that's where we all came from. The distinct percentage of Americans have immigrated here. My ancestors are from Italy and Ireland. Sure that they came through Ellis Island, but this situation, these guys applied for a legitimate status, and most likely they're going to be granted it because they're coming from war-torn countries, places where our war on drugs has failed. Guys, like we can't overstate the problems that we have caused in some of these places. Like, so our war on drugs has failed. It creates violence in other countries. people come here to flee from that violence. A lot of people are making the case about like climate change. I'm saying they don't have enough nuclear power. They're not creative enough, or they're anti-nuclear power, so they don't have air conditioning. So okay, whatever. Like I'm not buying those arguments. They're centrally planned economies that are failing and torn by strife. And
Yeah.
so people want to come here, and especially at a time when we do have a pretty low unemployment rate. Like
Yeah. I
everybody
know
can,
it's the there's a
relax a
low
little bit.
unemployment. If you want work, in a lot of times you can get it, right? And in fact, like there's another issue right now where like on kind of the other end of this, like this isn't a it kind of is a Rochester specific issue because there's like it's like a it's like a microchip design like plant that is going to come here. It's not going to be like a manufacturing facility. It's like a design campus, right?
Okay.
But there's these companies all across the country that are having trouble finding enough skilled workers quickly to be able to like jump in and get those jobs, right? Like just like the education and the demand for that type of work hasn't quite caught up with like American students who are going and getting a degree and getting qualified for those specific things, right? So a lot of these companies, like there's a big one out in Arizona, aren't able to open despite all the massive federal subsidies that we've given for like chip manufacturing, because they don't have the talent anywhere near them to do that. And so like, well, can we just hire immigrants? Can you lift or increase the quotas of like skilled worker visas for people to come in from like Taiwan or wherever? And the federal government has kind of been like, no, maybe we won't do that. So now instead of just allowing a few more immigrants in, we just don't get this manufacturing facility to open, and the Americans don't get the jobs either. And we don't get the chip production that like we spent billions in subsidies for. So it's lose, lose, lose if we don't allow more immigrants in on this end too. Like why are we doing it? Like, why not have talented people come here? Why not have talented people stay here instead of like kicking people out, which is the thing that happens even with like highly skilled people.
Yeah. The two-way visa program is a very, very, very like it's not a good deal. And we honestly, when we want skilled people here, we should revamp that system too. And frankly, we should kind of like arguably, guys, like I get all the arguments about having a welfare state and open borders, but like a certain amount of freedom and free trade, like still will benefit all of us. Like, I don't know. It gets people get caught up in, let's call it culture wars and misunderstanding and the immigration issue has been my entire lifetime of people arguing over whether we should have open borders, whether we shouldn't have open borders. Ronald Reagan himself granted amnesty to 16 million people that were here working illegally. I don't know, man. Like I get caught up in this. I see my property rights are under siege by my local government. I see that, there's property theft crimes seem to be on the rise in places where people are angry at rich people. So I get caught up in that. I understand where people are coming from, but like a legitimate asylum seeker is a legitimate asylum seeker. Elections have consequences. If we want to change it, we got to change that. But there's something about the United States that we should be immigrant friendly, period. And guys, I do a lot of construction work. They have lots of different crews coming in. There's lots of people that don't speak English and they work just as hard as guys that do, period. That's it. And they probably are working for less money per hour. So
yeah, I know. And I know some people are like, oh, they're undercutting wages, or you could go get the job again. It like there in some of those situations, and it's not always like totally fair, but some of those situations, like it's like you need someone who can like be fluent in English. You need someone who like understands things a bit better, and that's gonna command a higher wage than someone who doesn't speak English, who can't like communicate with customers or with vendors. And like they can work hard, they can do their thing, but they're gonna need to be trained to be like that higher skilled worker, and sometimes that requires language skills. Like, look, it's not exactly undercutting your wages if you know how to like apply your skills effectively.
Yeah, I'm not even like, I know Geraldo made a big deal out of they're coming to deliver our pizzas. Like it sounded so like racist and bigoted, but like also in a way it's true. They're just coming here to become part of America whatever way that they
Oh,
can.
sure, yeah,
And like the Irish, eventually they'll take over the police stations, and that's going to be the way to go. Like that's the way to the top, guys. And eventually an Irish kid will be, president someday. I mean, back in 1960.
Yeah, right. It could happen, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to say like the immigrants are coming here and just taking like the low skill jobs because it's all over the place. Because people are people, right? Like people come in with different skill sets, and actually, that's one of the other issues we get, where like you get folks who are like pretty good doctors in places, but then have trouble like immediately meeting the requirements of becoming a doctor in the United States, and can't do that. Like the kind of cross country licensing of like medical professionals and other types of professionals, like even like skilled trade type of stuff is tough. And so you have these like very talented, intelligent people sometimes who aren't able to find like work that's equivalent to like the high level of training that they've received. just because our licensing system's a bit strange.
Yeah, so basically I think a lot of this stuff about illegal or asylum seeking, all of this stuff would settle down if we got the welfare state under control, if people saw that property crimes were being punished, if people didn't feel threatened by their local government that they were going to lose their own property, if like trespasses weren't constantly forgiven, if we had like a way to make money off of renting out rooms in our houses, if the government got out of our god dang way on so many issues, like we would be more relaxed, period. Like that's the real issue, is the government is using this as a tool to divide us, and that's the way it's always been, guys. And they keep doing it, man. They
recycle the thing. And again, like the people can like in a way that provides value to everyone, like provide value to immigrants and like get value from them. Like you thought about like the room renting thing. Like that's how a lot of people used to get their start a couple hundred years ago. Now it's incredibly difficult to do some of that stuff, or people do it like under the table. But that used to be like a good way for families to make a little bit of extra money if they had extra space, and for someone to get like a cheap living space while they got their start. And
man, think about the oversight that creates, right? Like how if you're renting a room from some old lady who's half crazy, like you're gonna try pretty hard not to make her mad, or you're gonna be out on your butt. So like you're going to it's just as a good societal correction, a structure that we all benefited from. That's how we got here.
You do that.
It would be great to share that with people in the future.
Yeah, we can do that. And all it takes is letting people have a little bit of liberty. That's it.
Freedom solves a lot of these problems.
Just do some freedom.
That's
all right, but we gotta head to break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the government does so much to people, like to screw them up and hate their neighbor. It's constant. It's like, ugh.
No, yeah, it's.
When I talk about Megan Rapinoe later, you're gonna be like, what? The government.
Right,
she's a tool, man. She's a tool of the mainstream media and the government.
Yeah,
she's a victim in a way.
Yeah, like I said, to me, like the one thing I didn't end up talking about too is like I don't. There's a bunch of people like, well, no one asked the county if these people could come in. No one asked all of our legislators. They didn't know. No one asked me if like we should allow these migrants in. And to me, I'm like, no one asked me if you could be my neighbor either. Like
you lots of moral busybodies out there.
Yeah, right? Like I just kind of moved to Rochester. Like I didn't have to like ask anyone's permission other than like the guy I rented my apartment from. Like that was it. He was the only one. Like me and my wife just moved out here. And we were migrants from Utica, but we just came out here and we started a new life. And Rochester has its own like unique culture, distinct from like where we were before, which was Aurora, New York, and then New York Mills, New York, and just moved into the middle of the city and had to understand a new thing and get our start at 22 years old. And to me, it's like I don't think for the most part most migrants should have to get any more permission than that, like other than like getting identification. You should just be able to do your thing. The landlord wants to rent something out to you, great, like do it.
Yeah, when a dude shows up every day at the same time I show up and does the same amount of work as me, and sometimes because I'm actually, guys, I got to admit, like I'm getting a little bit older, like when they do the crawling on the ground stuff and like I'm like, I don't care like
cool,
whether they speak perfect English, and I don't care like the pigment in their skin. I don't freaking care. I'm just that's it. I'm just I think that that's a better way to be. And I'm not sure that people are caught up. I'm not sure it's a racial issue. I just think it's a government failure issue. And that's because they play the politics of division. And I think they do it on purpose.
No, that's part of it. Yeah, I'm sure for some people it's racial, but for most people it's like I see all these other problems that the government hasn't solved. Here's this outsider coming in, and not only are they not going to fix their problems and we're going to split our resources further, like they're also probably not going to help this person out either, and then that will make our situation worse. That's the worry, that's the fear, right?
Sure.
And it's not totally unfair because again, you see how like Europe in many cities have failed to like allow immigrants to thrive, have kept them fully dependent on the state, haven't allowed them to work, have ghettoized them, and like kept them in poverty in many ways, despite their robust like healthcare systems and welfare states, etc. Like they've created terrible situations, which it could solve by just like making it easier for people to live their lives and become part of society. But in Europe though, like it's a bit more of a racial thing. Like it is like it's.
So somebody had to write a law so that these guys could get jobs, right? Like, didn't that happen? If I'm remembering this correctly?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing. So you just let people do that. And I do appreciate the comment. I didn't say it out loud, Shelly, but Shelly on YouTube said, ignore your government and embrace your neighbors. Yeah. It's a good thing.
Make the world a better place, man. Got two neighbors that could hug out their issues over Trump versus Biden, you know? That would be good. Yeah. Just hug it out, guys.
Just hug it out. All right. We'll go back at 27. We'll jump into the Buffalo Bills issue, the stadium issue.
We got to talk about that for sure.
Got that by. But if y'all have anything else, make sure you leave your comments. You know what to do. We're gonna go back in 5. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim the Freedombarian O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. Solving problems with freedom is something that we've got to do. And guys, we look at these big, huge contracts that get handed out all over the state, and inevitably, the problems that have happened in the past happen in the future. We'd never fix them, right? So my precious Buffalo Bills and their brand new stadium.
Might be getting more expensive. And again, I say this as a Bills fan too. I'm wearing a Bills hat right now. I know you all on the radio can't see that. The folks on the live feed where we have a video can see I'm wearing a Bills hat. But yeah, no, might get more expensive. Now, I did read through what it is. That like because they're looking at like cost overruns. It might be like as high as $1.9 billion now. Just possibly, supposedly, millions and millions over. And remember, this is something that the state is going to subsidize a good amount. They're going to subsidize up to what, 850 million? Was that the number?
I think that's the number that they're going to directly subsidize. Allegedly now this Kathy Hochul might be her shootest deal ever, because the Bills themselves are on the hook for all of these cost overruns. That's going to affect their ability to buy talent. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, no, it might be a thing. And again, the one thing that like just bums me out about this whole thing is just like, all right, like, so first of all, yeah, I don't want the state to subsidize this at all. Second of all, I am somewhat worried that they're going to come back to the state hat in hand and be like, listen, we're so far invested that they're going to have they're just going to plow through with the sunk cost fallacy. Like we have so much invested, but we just need a little bit more to make it a great stadium, to make it the stadium that you guys envisioned. Will you please just give us a few $100 million more in subsidies to make that possible?
And we'll give you a little higher cut. We'll charge a little bit more for the beer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, we'll add 3 more jobs, so you'll get some more tax slaves. It's going to be great. We've got you, New York State. We've got you.
3 jobs, maybe 5 whole jobs, Tim. Like maybe they'll really up the ante. No, but like, yeah, I'm
no one
worried.
checks on, and completely unaccountable. And this is where libertarians and conservatives overlap. We see these big boondoggles, and we see government waste, and we see these like a lot of people who have their own businesses can't imagine just being able to say, "Hey, guess what? Your budget's blown. Give me more money." Like it just does not work like that in the private sector, not without major arguments, not without everybody taking hits, and not without a real agreement where people are examining the dollars and cents of the situation. Like, sure, if the bills were saying, hey, you know what, we don't like the quality of astroturf that you're bringing, we need more better astroturf, like that's something you can charge extra for, right? Like I you bid wood countertops, and really I want like granite from the Alsace in France. Okay. And so like obviously I'm not on the hook for that. But these guys are just like, here's the bid package. They're all like, yeah, we'll do it for this much. They put it in, they approve a price, and then they're like, oh, sorry. It's actually going to be way more than that. It's like, and everybody just goes, okay. There's not a government project that doesn't run into these wicked, wild cost overruns.
Yeah, and again, like in theory, this should be a private organization managing it effectively. And I guess like the COO just went out. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it's wild. Yeah, like I can't imagine like. Well, it blows my mind that like for a relatively limited project like this, and again, it is just a stadium. I know it's a complicated stadium, but it is just a stadium. Like how they could run over by like $600 million potentially, like that. That is just a crazy amount of money to me. Like I don't get how that happens. And again,
some steel. I don't know. It's not that hard. I could build it.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, I figured it out. I juiced the biz a little bit, but I think about this in the context like SoFi Stadium again. Like I keep coming back to this. Like this stadium out in LA. I mean, I know it costs like $5.5 billion, but they self-financed it. They figured it out. They didn't actually get government help in that situation, which is nuts. Like they figured out how to like do it on their own and make it profitable. And I don't get why like they couldn't. New York State and the Buffalo Bills couldn't figure out how that can happen again. And I say that as someone who's like a big fan of the Bills and all that stuff, but like I don't really want to subsidize it either.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Bills, but we're never going to have a winning team because the tax structure in New York State is overblown. We have the highest athlete tax in the country, so we can't afford talent, guys. With the property, the salary caps and stuff like that. Like we got destroyed by the Bengals because the Bengals had a better backup offensive line, and that's because that's a function of the salary cap and taxes, and that, guys, is a reality. So
maybe part of it, and I'm sure like part of the like reason that the Bill Stadium is costing what it does is in part because of New York State rules related to like what you have to pay in terms of like prevailing wage stuff, in terms of like other types of regulation on like buildings and whatever's scaffold law. That's the whole thing.
Millions of dollars it adds to big construction projects, millions and millions of dollars. And it's like New York State is the only state that still adheres to scaffold law. Maybe
right.
New Jersey might too, but like same issue. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars a year and they stick to it. We've done shows on that in the past, right?
Yeah, we have. And like just again, generally like the idea of like trying to build like big things either as private companies or as governments, and why like especially in places like New York State, it ends up being extraordinarily expensive, and we can't build like the fun stuff like a new stadium for the Bills. It ends up being way more expensive than anyone predicted, in part because of these rules, or things like subway lines in New York. How does it cost like 20-30 times as much to build a mile of subway in New York City than it does in Paris? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like there's no reason it should cost all that much more, except for the dysfunction of both New York State and New York City and the rules that they have imposed upon themselves, making it way too expensive to do anything to provide like the structure, the infrastructure, the roads, the subways, all the stuff that we're supposed to get in exchange for having taxes extracted from us, right? Like that, if that's the price we're paying, for a civilized society, like why is it so expensive?
And why is it so much more expensive here than it is every place else? And
every other place, socialist France can build a subway cheaper than us. It's wild.
Yeah. Look, it's an amazing situation. It doesn't exist in the private sector. You don't get away with this kind of stuff without the government being involved. You don't get $300 million worth of cost overruns without the government in there subsidizing stuff. So, Kevin, what would a libertarian show be without talking about weed legalization and, again, the government failure to provide some sort of kind of hellscape going on with the Office of Cannabis Management yet again in New York State? So once again, they kind of got to force through. They paid off a company out of Michigan that was suing them. And so they were able to issue licenses for a very distinctly short period of time. And as of, I want to say last Tuesday, once again, we are at, as of Monday this week, we are once again prohibited from issuing cannabis licenses. Isn't that amazing?
Just the absolute completely wildly incompetent rollout of this stuff just kills me.
It was so arguably, guys, the problem is that they played identity politics when they came up with the Office of Cannabis Management, and that's been the source of the two big stoppages in licenses being issued. And so now they're being sued by a veterans organization saying you're discriminating against disabled veterans in your rollout of licenses. Can we please get somebody to look at this? And with apparently a judge agreed. Apparently a judge just said, "Yep, time to block those licenses going out."
Yep, that they're the Office of Cannabis Management is favoring convicted felons, convicted victims of the war on drugs over disabled veterans. So now no one gets to start their business. No one, just stop it all together, because instead of being like, oh, you should just issue more licenses to disabled veterans against, no, stop everything. Now,
arguably, maybe the Office of Cannabis Management is incredibly competent, and we should thank them for the licenses that they've been able to issue with the set of rules that they've been handed to issue licenses. Like maybe we should give them the benefit of the doubt, which kind of goes against my grain. But it's a complicated structure. It's not kind of ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I don't know. It always makes me laugh, and I feel bad talking to conservative people about a marijuana issue where I know that they're kind of on the fence about it still. But this is an issue of freedom. It's an issue of history. It's an issue of why marijuana became illegal in the first place. And there is a very real issue that people were punished for decades for something that is a very, very, very minor drug, if you will. Way less harsh on you than alcohol. And as I take a sip of beer, that's a reality, guys, you know?
Exactly. And again, the solution to this is nuts. It's you have this zero-sum mindset, this fixed pie mindset around what could be an expanding industry, right? We've got to stop everything because there's only so many licenses we can hand out, and we have to keep that limited. Therefore, we're just going to halt everything until we figure this out and make sure that, convicted drug felons aren't preferenced over disabled veterans or minority and women-owned businesses or distressed farmers or whatever, right? Those it sounds like I'm just throwing stuff out there. Those are the groups, but yeah, you could just say we'll just give out more licenses. Just make it easier for people to start businesses. That's all you got to do. That could be the remedy could be freedom. And I know we're biased. Our show is called A Free Solution, but guys, we have a free solution for you. The free solution is just let people open businesses. Same as the solution in the first segment too. Just let people work.
Just guys, just try freedom. It's a very simple solution to these problems. So many of our problems, and we do get kind of dragged down in the mire, but 80%, 90% of the stuff we talk about solved with more freedom, and it would be a better situation for everyone. I'm not going to open a marijuana store, but who knows? Maybe it's a good idea for people that are in that culture. Let them open their stores wherever they want to. Honestly, I get that people really want licenses for this stuff. Arguably, they have liquor licenses. So arguably, I could accept the notion of marijuana licenses. But this is like prohibitive, like ridiculous clown show. What's going on here in this state?
I mean, like, listen, again, if I say, okay, I accept the premise of the license for anyone who's doing something like fraudulent or illegal, right? So like the purpose of having the license say, yes, I'm a business that is selling marijuana is a known product, quality, quantity, right? I'm not cutting it with anything suspicious. If you do something, you sell a fraudulent product, then you lose your license. Or if you sell it to children, you lose your license.
Sure.
Okay, fair enough. You know,
Okay.
I mean, they'll go buy on the black market now, like they always have, but like,
okay,
fair.
yeah.
So okay, but like that it should be basically as simple as that. Like, you know, that just sell what you say you're selling, don't sell it to children, and like I guess pay your taxes too, even though, you know, I'm a grumble about that, but just do those 3 things, and like it should be fairly straightforward. Instead, it's incredibly complicated, and we're making it more difficult than it needs to be in terms of like the ability of people to be able to own and operate and open up businesses, because, you know, you got all these complicated rules like, well, we can only have so many, and I'm like, why? Just let people open up a thing, and if there's too many, some will fail. That's okay. That's fine. Businesses fail all the time. You gave it a shot, not for you, okay, right? But that's it should be like any other business.
And again, even the action of the state makes that kind of more fatal, right? Like opening up, because you have to buy this license, because you have to make commitments and purchasing commitments. Like if you fail, it's kind of more fatal than if you just open up a quick little business and it doesn't really work out. You know, that we've overcomplicated everything in society.
Yeah, no, just let people be entrepreneurs. All right, but we're heading up on break now. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right, folks. Now on Facebook. Now the black market can flourish again. Yep.
I don't think it ever went away, to be perfectly honest with you.
No, it still exists in most places. Like it, especially like it's gonna. Obviously, it still exists because in New York, because there's nothing open in my whole region. I can't buy that stuff legally.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, like people can grow their own now and treat their plants better, so they can put them out in the open more easily, more readily. So that is going to help supply, guys. You just can't sell that stuff. Right? Just to be clear, selling your homegrown marijuana is illegal.
Yeah, people have funny ways of getting around it too. Like, no, I'm not selling it. I'm selling you some stickers for $50 and like giving you marijuana.
Yeah, I love it. I do love the ingenuity going on there.
Yeah,
work their way around these laws. But they are cracking down on that. That's my understanding.
No, they are. And again, another comment from his Facebook, he says, then they can arrest the underground and unlicensed people and increase the government compers. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. It's just the war on drugs continues. That's how it's going. And we never go ahead.
I've never got to where I've never understood the why of the prohibition mindset. Is it like nanny state? Like, I guess it goes back to prohibition, right? Where it's like everybody's got to be in charge of everybody else, and we need a strong hand, a strong parental hand to guide our behavior.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, they'll usually like say it under like either moral or like safety concerns. Like in New York State's case, they're like, we can't allow unlicensed growers to sell their product because we can't ensure the quality of that product. Right. So that's the argument that they make. Now
they can't ensure the quality of my road. So how can I count on them to ensure the quality of my marijuana? Like,
don't
guys,
particularly trust them that
marijuana, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. And again, to me, like you could have third-party groups like evaluate the quality of the product too. And again, if the third-party group does an investigation and finds out you're misrepresenting the product, then that in the same way that if like I misrepresent like any other product, there should be consequences for that, right? Like again, fraud is something that like there's a legitimate role for government to like intervene in like a libertarian society, maybe not an anarchist society, but like in a libertarian society, like fraud's a legitimate thing for government to intervene in. And if someone is selling a product that is of poor quality, sure, like an intervention is justified in that case.
Yeah, we need the ISO 9001 for weed. That's all. It's like you pay them a couple bucks. They come in and they put some stickers on your packaging. They do a little bit of testing. And look, guys, it's real. Like what they do. Okay, because they put their name on it. It's like Underwriters Laboratory. They put their name on it. If you're selling a bad product, they will sue you and they will cover the expenses for you selling the bad product. But they're going to take everything you own in that process. Like they're going to ruin you. And that's the agreement you sign up with when you make that certification agreement. You can't commit fraud. They will catch you and they will ruin you.
Yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, I don't know. And, you know, we never talked about it the other day too, like the government banning like the THC seltzers too.
Oh yeah, I know that was a good one.
Which is
no.
No, yeah, like to me, I'm like I would be more likely. I mean, I'd be more likely to consume that product because I don't really want to smoke. I don't like smoking that much. I'd rather, you know,
me neither.
Dude, yeah, no, but like to me, like that's another like relatively safe way of like being able to consume THC. And the reason why they banned it is because, again, same thing. The Office of Cannabis Management's like, well, this isn't regulated by us, therefore we can't determine its safety. Because they are the final arbiter of what is safe and unsafe, right? Like they tell us. Thank you, government, for telling us it. And it's fine. Like the whole product exists in part because of a loophole where like people were taking like low THC hemp products that were legal, that don't meet the threshold for federal government regulation, processing them so much that they were able to get like THC out of it and then mixing it with seltzer.
Heroes.
Yeah, and I'm like, I love it. Like people are like, oh, it's a loophole. I'm like, no, they followed the law. Like, love it. Like that's a great thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's those went away. This thing, just one more thing the government has taken from us.
Was one more thing.
Yeah. But anyway, we should get back to our final segment. We'll go back in at 47. And again, love the comments. Appreciate y'all being here, and get to the final segments. Probably 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Arian O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and as we have so many times in the past, and similar to some of the subjects we brought up in the show, we have found government to be incompetent in a number of areas. And arguably this one should be probably the most outrageous piece of stuff that we're going to cover today. And people should justifiably be outraged by the performance and arguably the ability of the FBI to prosecute people who are probably not actually completely insane criminals. They do things. So basically what I'm talking about, guys, is that out of Newburgh, about in 2011, 4 people were convicted of potentially being terrorists, right? On the word of Shahid Hussein, guys, and that name is going to actually play into this story a little bit more because he was an FBI informant who himself was not like pristine and of wind-driven snow kind of pristine. This guy was kind of a troublemaker. This guy kind of was an effective, shady kind of businessman. And so what he did was convince the FBI that he found 4 terrorists and guess what? Last week, I think it was July 27th, 3 of the Newburgh 4, and I don't know if you guys remember this from several years ago, but 3 of the Newburgh 4 were released under a kindness kind of amnesty thing through a judge because, and the judge actually kind of lambasted the FBI, Kevin.
Yeah. No, actually, criticized them a bit just because, again, in this situation, it seems like they were like not coerced, but like what's the word I'm looking for when like when the government like induces someone to commit a crime, or when an informant induces someone's what's
entrapped, perhaps.
Entrapped. That's the word I was thinking of.
That's
you
the
got
word
it.
you're looking for. Yeah.
I don't think she used the word entrapped, but like it's implied.
Yeah. So I'm referring to an article dated July 27th, out of ABC News, by the way. So this is real. Okay, this isn't like some kind of like Alex Jones kind of truth conspiracy website. This is the ABC News. A judge orders the release of 3 of the Newburgh 4 and assails the FBI's role in a post 9/11 terrorist sting. So Anta Williams, David Williams, and Leguet Payen, 3 of the men known as the Newburgh 4, were hapless, easily manipulated, penurious, petty criminals caught up more than a decade ago in a scheme driven by overzealous FBI agents and a dodgy informant, one Shahid Hussein. And
yeah,
guys, Kevin, you had a story about somewhere local that they basically did the same thing to high school kids. Like what the FBI does needs to be reworked, or guys, and don't let me scare you with this. Perhaps we just abolish the FBI.
Let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of it.
Would be it seems at this point their list of successes seems to be driven by cases of entrapment, by all sorts of problems. And look, like Vivek Ramaswamy says, we don't have to fire them all. Like some of them could get jobs in like Homeland Security and investigating white collar crime. And he's like, there's 15,000 field agents in the FBI and over 35,000 FBI employees. He's like, we could probably get rid of 75% of them and abolish the FBI and actually be more successful in prosecuting real crimes if we weren't sending them out here to create crimes. That's the thing.
I mean, I would love to just start with that, right? Like that the cases where, and there's just too many of them, and I know someone out there saying like, of course they go out and they solve real cases and they do a thing. Well, yeah, okay, I get it, but like I would like cases like this to not happen though. The cases where there's 3 people who are like maybe not smart, maybe not like great people, but like they get caught up in this thing because like they want to get someone. They're here to stop the bad guys. They're here to stop the terrorists. And in the process of doing so, they end up like being the ones who are leading the way to like building a conspiracy to commit a crime, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about the Rochester example with like that guy who is basically on again, off again homeless, who was driven to Walmart to go and buy like a machete to go like and carry out a terrorist attack on behalf of ISIS or whatever. But like the dude was totally incapable of doing that stuff on his own without the support of the FBI. And I remember the Michigan governor plot too was another case where like people who were like maybe not all that interested, maybe like radical, maybe not great people. And I don't know. That's not really like the thing at issue here. The thing at issue is like who is driving them to like go move forward to like conceive of a plot and then start to build the tools to like actually commit a crime and put people in danger. And in some of those cases, it's the FBI themselves. They're the call is coming from inside the house. The FBI is the one driving this, or they're informants, right? And that's what seems to have happened here.
Yeah, in this case, this Shahid Hussein, whose name should, especially to those of us in upstate New York, in our local area in Schoharie County, and this actually made national news. But Shahid himself is guilty of trying to stir the men up with rhetoric. He helped them choose targets. He offered them money to accomplish missions. He bought them groceries. And he provided them with the fake bombs and the fake missile. So at least, guys, it wasn't like the guns for the Fast and Furious guns program. It wasn't quite that bad where they actually gave away real guns, hoping that they could track them down the road. And I'm not sure if that was the FBI. Maybe I'm mixing and matching, but I don't care. The government does nefarious stuff, and we should talk about it. So Shahid led these guys down this primrose path, which ended up ultimately with them being convicted. The fourth guy has an appeal going already that he was entrapped and he's trying to fight that out. So he didn't apply for this leniency program, but his lawyers are saying, well, maybe we could do both, like fight So eventually, probably the fourth guy is going to get released too. But Hussein just happens to be the owner of that stretch limo that crashed in rural Schoharie, New York, that killed 20 people.
Yeah.
His son was the manager, and his son, unfortunately, is probably a victim of this guy. This guy seems like a narcissist, right?
Yeah.
It is yes, Shelley. It is the same guy that owned the limo company. That's the reality.
Yeah, Shelly on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, weird thing. Like, dude who's in the news for other things, and apparently had other things going on too related to fraud. That's why he became an informant as well, because the FBI. That's sometimes what happens with informants is they've done their own shady stuff, so they're like, hey, we'll forget about that if you help us do this thing, right? Like,
yeah, they do that. And look, like Kevin said, the ultimate goal here is that we don't have stories like this. And I get that I get the drive for safety, and this is again where I get into an area where I strangely and oddly agree with, or at least at the very least understand where my conservative friends are coming from. Where this need for safety, these things of the 9/11 kind of situation, if
hey,
they
there are bad people out there.
Yeah, if they can be prevented, how do we prevent them? And unfortunately, what it looks like is that we prevent them by, entrapping people that probably wouldn't have done those things to begin with. I don't know, that's the argument here. So this Shaheed is a bad dude, Kevin. Period.
Yeah, that kind of seems like it. And I don't know, the FBI at least reform the FBI. Like that, there's my moderate. I know you took the abolish the FBI approach. Sure, maybe, yeah, I could get on board with that.
And
but
look,
like, man, at least fix this stuff. Like, have some accountability for like anyone who's involved in this thing, right? Like, and any of the other like stuff that, again, if the actual entrapment word isn't used, then at least like something that smells like it.
Sure. And we actually have like for once, and it's kind of a weird time, but we have a presidential candidate who is saying that at the very least, the FBI is something that should be on the chopping block. He's talked about, and Lars also kind of talked about it, right? Like mass layoffs does preclude civil service protection. So if you lay off a whole bunch of people, it's fine. You can't just fire specific civil servants. So I'm kind of attracted to this whole concept of, can we make this work? And is this a successful strategy? So, and Vivek was very clear. Like I listened to him, an excerpt of him on the PBD podcast, and he was very clear, and he has a reasonably articulate plan about how we could break up the FBI and not like keep the good people and get the other people out there on the streets looking for work,
Yeah. Well, so any legitimate law enforcement functions would go into the still relatively new Homeland Security as his proposal.
No, there's also positions in the Department of Treasury that are somewhat understaffed because they have a hard time finding qualified people, and areas of like fraud prevention or getting to a fraudster before he does major amounts of damage. And I think that on some level we could get along with that. Like they would be investigating those phone calls to grandma where they're like shaking you down for your credit card number and stuff like that.
I for one want YouTubers to just solve all of those problems. I think they can do it.
The private sector can provide.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm gonna forget the guy's name. Something Rober, Mark Rober. Have you seen those YouTube videos about that stuff where he took down like
I love the idea.
So he's the guy who did like the glitter bomb packages.
Okay.
Right? And so you have to look up. But he did a whole other thing where like he figured out like an international like call scam scheme that was based in India, but had like operatives like throughout like the United States too. So like there'd be like a whole system, and he figured it out. Like he got someone who was like getting these types of calls. He pretended to be this person, did a thing where they did like a money drop off at like an Airbnb that wasn't owned by them, like traced to like who like the local like gangs and criminals that were involved in this, and then traced it up the line over to like an Indian call center, and then was able to like get into their system and figure them out and like work with like the Indian police to like take down these. Like It's like a completely legit thing. Like, look, I'll see if I can find the link to it.
that would be
But like,
great.
it's great. But yeah, like he did that. He also did car break-ins in San Francisco too. Figured it out. Not figured it out, but like he, basically just set up a dummy package with the glitter bomb thing, and it's like, well, when someone steals it, like we'll just set this off and at best prank them, or possibly even like just get the cops involved with people who are stealing this stuff.
Honestly,
but the police weren't taking the initiative to do it themselves to solve that like criminal justice problem. But this guy's doing it for like YouTube cred.
And that's good enough, right? Because if you get enough views on YouTube, you get monetized and make tons of money.
Yeah, I mean, so he made it legit, and made money off of it. So why not? Like that's again that's a libertarian future. That's what I think we should all strive for.
Yeah. So how are we doing on time? Because we've had some.
We have all of a minute and a half left.
All right.
So anything else is going to have to wait
until the after show.
The after show,
because
our time is limited on WYSL, folks. I'm sorry, radio audience, but you got to listen to the podcast or the online version on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter to get the full thing.
Yeah, Biden's talking tough on China, guys, and I know a lot of you guys are going to get excited about it, and I'm going to try to take it in a different direction because it's just not as cool as it sounds. It's just not.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to have to say again, we have to save that for the after show. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Thanks, WYSL audience, for being here. If you're listening online, y'all can stick around. We still got more stuff. We're talking about Biden in China. Maybe we'll jump into some of the culture war issues. I know Tim is
talking about. I do have some stuff about culture wars that Kevin loves that stuff, so it's going to be great.
Yeah, great. Looking forward to it. All right. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great night, folks. Take care. All right. That ended a little bit early. I've gotten in trouble with our producer because I've apparently been going like 15 seconds over what I was supposed to be going for the last 2 episodes.
All right, that's fair. Bob is a great guy. He's very fair with us. I get it, man.
He's just like, hey, fix this next time.
Yep. That's all he ever said to me, and he was really nice. And there was one time, all right, well, that's not all right. That doesn't sound like a big deal. No, Tim, it is a big deal. Just fix it, please. I was like, whoops.
Yeah.
Do you know what the Chevron deference is? Somebody's out there slumping us.
The Chevron deference. What thoughts about the Supreme Court possibly overturning the Chevron deference? So what that is based on a precedent that had to do with like a case that had the name Chevron in it, is that when a government bureaucrat, when a government agency says that like we created this rule for reasons, the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court just says, well, they have their reasons and we trust them, and we're just going to defer that they had a legitimate purpose in creating this rule or regulation, right? And so that's kind of like a precedence that exists, and members of the Supreme Court use. Like it's something like Neil Gorsuch talks about, like how he doesn't like that. Like specifically, he's mentioned it in some of his minority opinions, that we should not just defer to whatever the government says and take their reasons as fact and assume that their reasons are more legitimate than anyone who is challenging the regulation. And that was sort of weakened in part by the recent like EPA ruling. I don't remember what the case is offhand, but it was sort of weakened by that because the Supreme Court just said like that the EPA needs to have good reasons for like the particular regulations that they were bringing about, and couldn't justify those in reference to a challenge that had been brought. So I know I'm talking about it vaguely because I haven't read about it in like 4 months, but like that's roughly like what it was.
Arguably, I like it then. The way it's being framed right here, I love it. Like, turn it over. Like we are legislating from authority when we have places like the EPA and the NSA writing rules and regulations that we have to follow without them being legislated into law. Like, they shouldn't have that right. And certainly our legislators are already not doing their job anyway. So, like, let's make them do their jobs. I'm okay with that. I'll
Yeah.
actually be very excited if it happens. We can do a whole segment on it. I'll read up. It'll be awesome. Joe Biden.
Right on. Let's do it. All right. Let's talk about that.
Talking tough on China, guys. We can no longer, according to Joe Biden, that it's a good idea to block investing in Chinese companies when it comes to, we're committed. He's committed to keeping America safe by defending America's national security through appropriately protecting technologies that are critical to the next generation of military innovation. Okay, fine. Like, that arguably sounds like an admirable goal, but they basically can now no longer invest. Like, venture capitalists can no longer invest in Chinese businesses that may someday down the road create some technology that would benefit the Chinese military. Arguably, that's how I'm reading it.
So
protectionism, right?
Yeah, sort of. So there's some interesting thoughts on this, and I might find another YouTube video to share on this, because it mostly comes down to like things like microchip technology, right?
Sure.
And the national security. Not really making an argument for or against at this point, other than like let me give you the other side of it. The national security argument for it is that China right now is completely reliant on U.S. invented and Taiwan produced microchip technology for their defensive systems, right? And that they're using that stuff to expand their military capabilities in a way that threatens U.S. interests and does threaten, the security and also financial well-being of countries in their sphere of influence, right?
Okay.
So like that's the argument for like, so therefore it is in the U.S.'s national security interest for U.S. venture capitalists not to invest in the firms that are hijacking and sometimes straight out stealing U.S. invented technology for eventual use in China's like military systems.
Okay.
If you followed all that, like that's the case. Like I sort of get it, because a lot of Chinese companies are basically like fundamentally intertwined with the government there, and a lot of this technology does get pushed towards growing the state, right?
Hold up. I'll say it stronger. I think that every major company in China is intertwined with the government. That to be on the board of directors, or to be an owner in a company, or to have a majority controlling stake in a company, you have to be a member of the Chinese Communist Party, and you have to answer to the powers that be, at least on some level. So that's real. Okay, like that, I get it. So I guess it looked to me just like we're protecting some technology. Joe Biden made some offhanded remark about, we invented the transistor, and it was like totally wrong, and it just seemed out of context, and it looked like protection to me. But maybe there is. I can be like, all right,
Yeah, I fully believe that like Joe Biden didn't present that argument super well, but
yeah.
But I'm gonna share a video. It's a video by Johnny Harris that's worth checking out, where he dives into this in a way that we're not going to, because we're not making a living off of this,
right? Though we would like to. So subscribe to our Spotify channel.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe on Spotify, and there's even a button to support us that you can just straight up donate to us, and that gives us more resource to promote the show, to grow the show. We're not really like planning on making money off of this anytime soon. It just mostly like right now the short-term goal is like get this in front of more folks.
That is the goal, right? Because A, we enjoy doing it. B, we enjoy the interaction we get from people, and see, like, you'll get takes here that you get nowhere else. Like, people don't talk about cops shooting dogs. We talk about it, right? right? And not just like, hey, we're totally anti-cop. Like, let's have a real conversation about how this could be better for everyone. It's pragmatic libertarianism, Kevin. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Not reason libertarianism, because those guys are jokers.
I don't like reason.
I'm just kidding, man. They're okay. They really are. We can't all be crazy conspiracy theorists like me, and that's all right. So, Kevin, I want to talk about the culture wars a little bit, and I know that I got a fake news one for you. Like, apparently, Anheuser-Busch has sold its stake in Bud Light to Tilray Beverages.
Did they? That sounds like fake news.
It actually is fake news, but it's kind of funny because Anheuser-Busch has put 10 or 12 brands on the chopping block in some beverage presentation centers like craft brew pubs and stuff.
Right.
Like if Anheuser-Busch owns them, are they really craft brew pubs? But whatever, you get what I'm saying.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have put them on the chart. They did sell a number of products and brand lines and facilities to this Tilray Beverages. And when it was first being presented, it would look like they had sold Bud Light to them, and they did not sell Bud Light. They sold some of their off-brand stuff and some of their craft beer stuff to Tilray brands.
They are never selling Bud Light. Like, it just is not a thing that would happen. Like, if they sell Bud Light, the company's done. Right. Like,
yeah. Sure. They lost $400 million in sales. That's first of all, they'll build it back, right? They'll figure out a way to reconnect that bond with the people that were drinking Bud Light and that will drink Bud Light again, or they'll change the name of it, or the cans won't be blue anymore. They'll be like off red or something, or pink. Could you imagine if they were pink after the Dylan Mulvaney scandal?
Oh man, I gotta be honest, like because I saw stories like, man, I want to talk about this because like I fundamentally don't get why conservatives are kind of like obsessed and gleeful about this. Like, still, like, this has staying power. People are like, yeah, this is like our thing. So
I do like that they can have impact on the market, and I do feel as though what they're responding to is the cancel culture of their favorite icons and the constant. And again, it goes to the government and this nonstop manipulation.
Did Budweiser cancel them? Like, I don't think they did.
No, it's got nothing to do. They want to be able to exert power in the marketplace, like what they see cancel culture does to their favorite things.
Gotcha.
Whatever
they want to be able to exercise the same cultural power that the left does with some stuff.
Boy, that's a good way to put it, because I do see that inherent hypocrisy there, or that inherent problem there, where you guys are being manipulated and played off against each other to inappropriate ends to empower the government. I think that's the issue. So I like the way that you framed that.
Again, I'll say, like, you fully have a right to say that you don't want to consume a product because they disagree with your values, right? Like, it cuts both ways, right? To me, I'm like, that's the thing. If you really want to not shop at Target because they have a trans swimsuit line, okay, that's your prerogative, and you have the free speech to tell them, that you don't shop there and you think that other people shouldn't either. Okay, like that's your right. You can do that.
Yeah.
And the government shouldn't stop that, right? But conversely, right, if someone's like getting canceled for being racist, sometimes like that person is racist and deserves criticism, right? Like, a lot of times it's ridiculous. Sometimes it's ridiculous, but like, people can make cases for not wanting to associate with people or buy stuff.
Sure.
I usually don't get incensed about like either side in most of these cases. I'm like, I don't get the Bud Light thing. I don't get half of the left wing cancels stuff. Like, what's the one with Jamie Foxx this week?
I don't know.
So that one, I saw that one where he's like, they killed Jesus. What do you think they'll do to you? And everyone's like, that's anti-Semitic. Like, what? Because he said they killed Jesus. Like, he didn't say anything about Jewish people. Like, I don't get this one. I think he was just being dramatic. I don't know, man. I think
arguably the left does go down that road with when any kind of iconic person says something, if they can twist it in a weird way that will damage the credibility of that person, they do. And there was another one, and I know I'm not going to. It's too far in my brain because I'm preparing, Kevin, to talk about U.S. women's soccer, and I just got to get it out there, man. It's another area where we get played, and now I think that U.S. women's soccer is guilty of perhaps playing politics and responding to cultural issues, but I don't think that there's any excuse for us to all fall for the mainstream media manipulations about how awful this person was. And I'm not, man, her name is just slipped right out of my brain, and that is
Megan
horrible.
Rapaport, that one.
Yeah, that's it. So, like,
Yeah.
why do we let ourselves be? Why does anybody, not we, because I'm just like, she's kind of a victim. Yes, she kind of like contrasted with certain values. Yes, she has the freedom of speech. Did she use that speech in a way to deliberately antagonize a certain segment of the population? Also, yes. But all of the things that she did were exaggerated by the mainstream media to stick their thumb in your eye, and exaggerated by politicians to also stick their thumb in your eye and get you excited about things that you have. Honestly, I would recommend being less excited about, because they don't really affect you. It's a game that they play. Now, one of the things I'm concerned with is that the U.S. soccer team kind of kept her around for longer than she should have been there, and that's the U.S.
Sometimes
soccer
people
club.
have star power, though, right? Like that's sports
Do they
teams will
know,
do it
like,
all the time.
what's the obligation of a U.S. soccer team if they want to complain about their rate of pay is to win freaking games, right?
Yeah.
And so when we
I mean,
can't outplay
they got to sell
teams-
tickets. It's not winning games. They got to sell tickets and merch, and like that. That's how they increase their pay, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
it's it's any sports level, right? Like I guarantee if we thought about it hard enough, right? Like we can think of like someone in the NFL who maybe stayed on a little past their prime, but it's because they were well liked by fans and other players, and they got people to show up, right? Like
Sure. So that's what you think Megan was?
maybe, and I mean she's still pretty good in the same way that like the NFL folk, like you can't be terrible.
True.
But I don't. It's nothing against. I don't really watch like soccer all that much. Like occasionally I'll put a game on. Like I like watching soccer. I like going to games in person. I just don't keep up with it.
Yeah, I do. I just want to point out to everyone that when we get upset over these things, when Megan Rapinoe's behavior gets put on blast by the mainstream media because you're upset over it, guess who actually is the one being manipulated? Besides Megan Rapinoe, it's like you are being manipulated. Sure, I get that you're offended by her behavior. Sure, like she kneeled for the flag. Sure, her motives weren't pure there. I think she was seeking attention. Sure, that makes her a victim because they amplified her status and you got angry. And that's where I want people to take a step back, take a deep breath, and realize just how divisive politics has become. Where I don't know, kneeling for the flag, I get people are upset over it, but I understand free speech, and that's a reality. Like I'm going to defend Donald Trump in a future show about his ability to say things that he wants. That's it. Like I'm going to do it, and So I believe it.
He certainly has the right to say things. It's is he immune from criticism? No.
No.
And I know some people are like, you can't like cancel his free speech for that. That like I know is a much trickier thing. The indictment over the stuff related to like the election and whether or not his speech crossed the line from just talking about stuff to telling people to commit crimes. Right.
I'm cool with the argument about Georgia and having a discussion about whether he should be indicted for that. I'm less cool with Jack Smith's indictment as I reflect upon it and I look at what he's really saying. Like, and look, we can save this for another show because I think it would bring people in where we blow up this Trump issue as to whether Jack Smith is a legitimate, profound actor, or does Donald Trump still have rights to say things that he believes, regardless of what advice he's been given by whomever he's been given it. He can still believe and say what he wants to say.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that I can't criticize him. That doesn't mean that you don't get. I'm not asking you to think that he's a clean actor or a good actor. I'm saying Does he have that right? And I
get the argument. Like to me, like I'm kind of like you might cross the line there, but I get the argument to say like, no, he has a right to speculate and to act in good faith, possibly, on like using measures that he legitimately thinks are legal and may or may not be legal, in terms of like preserving his right to contest an election, right? Like that's the whole thing. And that again, we could draw it out a bunch, but like, did he do things that he thought were like understandably legal and would make sense if he were in the mindset that he had really won, or did he ask people to commit fraud and do other crimes in order to like take an unconstitutional act of trying to stay in power when he lost an election, right? That's and
a lot of effort's been put into making the January 6th event an insurrection. That's the premise that has to be proven first, and I don't think in a court of law, that's where I'm uncomfortable that would be an actual insurrection. And they're not actually saying, when they charge people, they're not actually charging them with sedition and acts of insurrection. They're charging them with, whatever. I don't know, but
causing a ruckus.
My patient is moving around, and so I lost
my
but it's concentration.
No, it's fine. It's probably about time to call it anyway.
Yeah.
So thanks again for joining us all tonight. Tim's got stuff to do. I've got to edit a show. Have a great night, folks. Take care.
All right. Good night.